The wind carried the faint scent of crushed rosemary, stirring the edges of a worn woolen cloak as she stepped beyond the village gate. The iron hinges groaned, a reluctant voice of warning echoing through the still morning air. Fingers lingered briefly on the rough wood, as if seeking blessing or farewell from the threshold that marked the boundary between safety and the uncertain world beyond. Behind her, the stone wall stood mute and steady, damp with centuries of moss and shadow, enclosing the lives of those who would never wander far. Before her, the narrow road stretched like a thread woven through the frost-cracked earth. Her cart weighted down with bolts of dyed cloth in deep indigos and vibrant reds. And earthen jars, heavy with golden honey, creaked and groaned with each reluctant turn of its wooden wheels. The scent of beeswax and fermented apples mingled with the cold breath of early autumn. Atop the watchtower, men leaned against rough timber, their eyes sharp and wary beneath leather caps. The sight of a woman alone on the road unsettled them, unsettling as a sudden silence in the bustling market square. Whispers trailed behind her like shadows, questions unspoken yet heavy in the chill air. But she knew well that this journey was more than trade. It was a fragile act of survival, a defiant step toward independence carved out by silver coins hidden beneath her bodice. Her boots pressed into the earth, sending soft clouds of dust into the morning light. The road ahead forked, as if offering choice in a land where freedom was scarce. One path led to the market, alive with music from fiddles and lutes, where voices rose and fell like the swell of a song. There, the air would be thick with the scent of fresh bread, roasted meats, and the sharp tang of spilled ale. Children chased one another through stalls bursting with colors, dyed wools, carved wooden toys, fragrant herbs bundled tight with twine. Here, laughter could drown the bitter truths of the day, if only for a while. But the other path wound into silence, narrow, shadowed by ancient oaks, whose skeletal branches clutched at the sky like fingers. It was a road whispered about in the village, where the cries of wolves and the cold eyes of strangers lingered beyond every bend. Few dared this way, especially not women carrying their livelihoods across unforgiving lands. Yet she had no choice, for the promise of coin was tied to the fragile bloom of life itself. The weight of her journey settled deep within her bones, a mix of hope and fear braided like the threads in her cloth. As the morning light filtered through a scattering of leaves, it caught on a small silver bell tied to her cart, a signal to unseen watchers, a talisman against the dark. She whispered a prayer in the old tongue, words folded like a veil around her heart, calling on the saints who once walked these paths with silent footsteps. With one last glance toward the village spires, she set her gaze forward. The road before her was both promise and peril, a path where the sound of footsteps could mean rescue or ruin. And so, beneath a sky brushed with pale gold, she moved into the story of countless women who traveled these dangerous roads, carrying not only goods, but the quiet strength of a world often forgotten. Beyond the fork, the market song awaited, and with it, fragile light that might yet kindle survival laughter, and the fleeting freedom found only in the gathering of voices and the turning of the seasons. Dawn spilled pale light over the cobbled road, softening the jagged edges of night with a tender glow. The stones, worn smooth by countless feet and carts, held the chill of early morning, their coolness seeping into her worn leather soles. The brass clasp at her cloak caught the first blush of sunlight, a small beacon against the muted grays and browns of her travel-worn attire. Beneath the heavy folds, the weight of her burdens shifted. Small parcels wrapped in coarse cloth salt, precious as tears. Cinnamon, its sweet fire promising warmth against the biting cold. And painted combs carved delicately and brightened with pigments, tokens of beauty for those she would meet. Each footfall was a silent bargain with fate. The road was no dance of courtly grace, but a living gauntlet in ancient rhythm where smiles could conceal blades, and hands might offer coin or cruelty. Yet beneath this heavy knowledge, she hummed an old harvest song, its melody threading courage through her breath, a quiet rebellion against the shadows clinging to the trees that bordered the path. The tune was a remembrance handed down by women whose own journeys had been etched into the fabric of time, a balm against loneliness and fear. Around her, the world slowly awakened. The scent of damp earth mingled with faint smoke from distant hearths. Crows wheeled above, their harsh cries punctuating the morning's fragile calm. From somewhere unseen, the clatter of a blacksmith's hammer began its relentless rhythm, echoing through the village that lay behind her, tethering her to a life both known and escaped. She thought of the market ahead, a place of temporary sanctuary, where the air would hum with voices and the scent of fresh bread baked in communal ovens. Their open doors invited the mingling of stories and trade stables laden with vibrant cloth, shining pots, and fragrant herbs. Children's laughter would ripple like a river, weaving through the bustle, while the warmth of shared fires kindled fleeting moments of belonging. Yet even amidst this hopeful promise, the road remained unforgiving. Nights brought the risk of bandits cloaked in shadow, the cold bite of wind that seeped into bones, and the gnawing ache of hunger. Her hands, roughened by years of weaving and barter, tightened around the reins of her mare, grounding her in the present moment. She carried more than goods. She bore the weight of unspoken stories of mothers who had sent daughters forth with trembling hearts of sisters, who had sewn secret pouches into cloaks of women, who traded not only wares, but whispers of longing and resilience. As the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows that danced across the road, she paused beside a wild flower clutching the roadside, a fragile bloom that defied the cold and neglect. It seemed to echo her own journey, a quiet testament to survival and hope, fragile yet unyielding. With a deep breath, she resumed her path, the distant clang of market bells already stirring faintly on the wind a promise of exchange. Voices gathered beneath open skies of a fleeting refuge from the perilous road. As the day stretched before her, she carried within her the heartbeat of 1,000 women who had walked these paths, their courage and grace woven into the very stones beneath her feet. Her mare's breath rose in pale clouds, dissolving into the sharp morning air as hooves struck the frozen mud in a slow, steady rhythm. The world around her was quiet but alive, the hush before the stirring of the day. Beneath the weight of winter's breath, the bare branches reached like silent fingers against a sky bruised with soft gray. Along the road's edge, the woods whispered secrets through rustling leaves and the faint rust of small creatures scurrying beneath frosted undergrowth. She kept close to this shadowed fringe, where the trees' dark arms offered fragile shelter from prying eyes and the uncertainty that lurked beyond. Behind her saddle, the pack was more than a mere bundle of trade goods. Wrapped carefully in coarse linen were letters, fragile threads of news and hope, destined for a widow living in the next town, her life marked by absence and memory. There, tucked among the parcels, a small vial of rose oil. It sent a quiet comfort meant for the midwife, who had welcomed more new lives than the village could count. And beneath these, a child's carved wooden toy, worn smooth by tiny hands and promises, carried like a talisman for an uncertain future. Each item was a lifeline, a whispered prayer carried across miles of cold earth. The road bent gently toward a bridge draped in winter mist, its ancient timbers veiled in frost that sparkled faintly like scattered stars. Beyond this crossing, her thoughts floated forward to a brighter scene, a fairground alive with the burst of color from bright banners, dancing in the breeze the thick warm scent of roasted chestnuts, mingling with sweet mead and the distant laughter of children chasing one another through crowded stalls. She imagined the song of minstrels weaving through the air, the vibrant clatter of wooden clogs on stone, and the welcoming glow of lanterns hung like fireflies in the growing dusk. Yet even as this vision bloomed in her heart, the reality of the journey pressed close, each step measured against the shadow of dangers unseen. Roads like these bore more than just travelers. They carried rumors, betrayals, and the sharp edge of suspicion. She moved with the grace taught by necessity, her eyes flickering beneath a hood that framed a face weathered by sun and hardship, yet softened by moments of quiet joy found in the weaving of threads. The scent of lavender dried in attic rooms and stolen glances beneath festival lanterns. In the cold breath of the morning, her mind traced the delicate balance of these lives, women whose days were stitched from labor and longing, whose hands fashioned beauty in embroidered silks, even as they carried burdens heavier than cloth. The market stalls would soon open, the village square pulsing with the rhythm of commerce and celebration, where neighbors shared stories and bread ovens glowed with sustenance. Here, beneath open skies, the fragile community gathered, voices rising in song, feet tracing dances older than the stones beneath them. She pulled her cloak tighter as the wind teased the edges of the forest, the mist curling like smoke around the bridge's wooden ribs. The journey was far from over, but the promise of warmth and shared moments awaited just beyond this veil of frost. And so, with a steady breath, she guided her mare forward toward light. Toward life, carrying not only goods but the quiet resilience of countless women whose stories would echo through these paths long after the banners had faded and the laughter had dimmed. The leather strap bit into her shoulder, a sharp reminder of the weight she bore as she adjusted the sack heavy with woven belts and dyed ribbons. Each ribbon, spun from flax dyed with madder and woad, carried the labor of countless handswomen who had coaxed color from earth and plant, threading sunlight into cloth. The belts, tight and sturdy, were gifts for daughters soon to be wed, tokens of love and protection woven into the fabric of their futures. Beyond the hedgerows, the sky stretched wide and pale, a trembling gray expanse that spoke of cold days yet to come. The horizon seemed to shiver beneath the breath of the wind, which carried the faint scent of damp earth and distant wood smoke. Her breath misted before her, a fleeting ghost in the morning chill. A wagon rattled past, wheels grinding stones and hollow earth. Its driver, a shadowed figure, whose eyes met hers only briefly before turning away. No greeting passed between them, strangers on a road carved by necessity, bound by survival rather than companionship. The world she traveled was stitched together by such silent encounters, moments pregnant with suspicion and fleeting human connection. Each mile was marked by weathered milestones, their worn Latin letters carved centuries before by hands long stilled. They stood like sentinels along the road, remnants of rulers whose names had faded into whispered legend. Their stone faces bore the scars of time chips and moss that told stories of passing feet and forgotten prayers. To her, these relics were reminders not only of distance, but of endurance. Markers on a path walked by countless women before her, whose lives were measured not in power, but in resilience. Somewhere, carried faintly on the wind, a minstrel's tune drifted, a plaintive melody weaving through the skeletal branches and stone walls. It might have come from a roadside inn, where weary travelers gathered beneath low timber beams and flickering candlelight. She imagined the warmth of that glow, the murmur of coin exchanged across rough-hewn tables, and the mingling voices steeped in laughter and whispered longing. She pressed onward, her fingers brushing against the coarse fabric of her cloak, worn smooth by years of travel and toil. Her thoughts drifted to the market stalls. She would soon reach their bright colors and bustling life, offering brief respite from the harsh rhythms of the road. There, amidst the clamor, women bartered with a fierce grace, their voices rising like song as they exchanged not only goods but stories, hopes, and the fragile threads of community. In these moments, the road felt both a burden and a promise, an endless stretch of uncertainty shadowed by fear, yet punctuated by the simple freedoms found beneath open doors and sunlit cloth. The scent of freshly baked bread and the distant laughter of children playing near fountains mingled with the crisp air, stirring memories of youth and the delicate joys of everyday life. As the gray sky deepened and the first flakes of frost kissed the earth, she wrapped her cloak tighter, the leather strap digging still deeper, but now tempered by resolve. Ahead, the inn's warm light beckoned a small beacon against the cold, a reminder that even amid hardship, there were places where community endured, where women's voices wove together in song and strength, and where the dance of daily life carried on, steadfast and sacred. She crossed the last plank of the footbridge, its timbers slick with moss, cold and slippery beneath her cautious steps. The wood groaned softly, a weary sigh beneath the weight of countless travelers who had come before, each carrying their own stories, hopes and fears interwoven like the spools of thread she carried close against her chest, her fingers curled tightly around a small pouch of dried herbs, lavender for calm, rosemary for remembrance, scents that clung to the linen folds of her cloak like whispered prayers. Beneath the bridge, the river murmured with a voice both ancient and distant, carrying tales from lands she would never see. Its waters moved in quiet persistence, oblivious to the borders and hardships that marked the roads above. The river's song seemed to cradle the past and present, reminding her that though her journey was bound to the earth beneath her feet, it was also part of a larger flowing tapestry, one where every woman's step, every exchanged word became a thread in the fabric of memory. On the far bank, the road unfurled like a ribbon of possibility, winding toward towns where the hum of life grew louder with every mile. These were places where gossip traveled as swiftly as goods, where whispered secrets passed from market stalls to tavern tables, where women bartered not only for fabric and spices, but for fleeting moments of freedom and connection. Her mind drifted to the midsummer fair yet to come. The village square alive with color and sound, where jugglers tossed flaming torches against a sky softened by twilight. Bakers pulled golden loaves fresh from roaring bread ovens, and cloth merchants displayed bolts of sunlit fabric, shimmering with the promise of new dresses and celebrations. In that imagined gathering, she saw young girls twirling with ribbons in their hair, laughter spilling like bright petals scattered on the breeze, the air thick with the scent of roasted chestnuts, sweet honey cakes, and the sharp tang of freshly brewed Alice symphony of senses that marked the brief respite from the toils of daily life. Yet beneath the festivity, a current of tension pulsed quietly, for even here, joy was tempered by the knowledge of what lay beyond miles of uncertain ground, stretching between safety and peril. Between her and the fair lay roads shadowed by threats both seen and unseen. A careless glance, a whispered question, might unravel the fragile cloak of protection she carried. The journey of a woman merchant was never just about barter and coin, it was a delicate dance between trust and suspicion. Each step forward was an act of courage against a world quick to judge and slow to forgive. As she lifted her gaze, the village rooftops gleamed faintly in the late afternoon sun, windows like open doors promising warmth and community. She longed for the murmur of voices mingling beside the fountain in the square, for the shared stories spun over cups of spiced wine, for the steady rhythm of daily life, where women's hands shaped not only cloth and bread, but the very soul of their world. Clutching her pouch once more, she took a steady breath, the herbal scents mingling with the crisp air. The bridge behind her whispered farewell as she moved onward, crossing the threshold between shadow and light, uncertainty and hope. Ahead, the path wound forward, not merely a road through land, but a passage through the lives of countless women who had walked before, whose joys and fears had shaped the very stones beneath her feet. And so, with the river's soft song still echoing in her ears, she stepped toward the fair's distant glow, toward the promise of gathering, celebration, and the enduring strength found in the communion of voices and the weaving of shared stories.